Did you know that Colombia is the world's leading source of materials? While the emeralds may draw in some enthusiasts, Colombia is rich in culture and history. I so happen to have the pleasure of getting to inform you all today about this country. Personally, Colombia has always been mentioned to me when growing up as a Mexican child, and I have always had a curiosity towards other Hispanic countries. First, I will go over Colombia's general customs. Next, their cultural norms, and finally, go over a current headline that's happening at that country. All right, let's get straight into Colombia's customs and communication. When it comes to greeting one another, Colombians are super excited to meet one another and express it as such. According to 2022 Culture Grams Online Worlds Edition entry on Colombia, under the section Greetings and Courtesies, when it comes to greeting, is seen as a gesture of kindness. They handshake and hug and showcase a lot of physical contact to greet one another. They would also kiss each other on the cheek, regardless if they know each other. You could be a stranger and they would just give a kiss you on the cheek just so they get to know you. Once introduced, the person is addressed appropriately, such as señor or señora, Mr. or Mrs., or doctor, doctor. It's kind of the same, but moving on. Next, we will be talking about Colombia's norms. Colombia's collectivistic culture shape the people where they always must be a part of a group. According to Hospeed.com, the Colombians will go out their way to help a person if they see that the relationship with that person will benefit them in any way. If they see an outsider that doesn't benefit them, they will consider them an enemy. Being an individual is kind of taboo in that country. It could be anything from being co-workers at a job or just family. Their society is labeled as highly masculine. There is high competition, not individually, but within the group that they are in. Say family, there's high competition on who's going to be the lead, say like the father or the son. Now that we are more educated on Colombia's customs, let's go over a current event. The people of Colombia have lost all trust in their government and putting their trust into the production and trade of cocaine. In the article Deep in Colombia, Rebel Soldiers Fight for the Same Prize, Drugs, by Julie Turkowitz in April 20th, 2022, working with New York Times, it states that all of this madness was supposed to stop back in 2016, where FARC, or Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, and the government signed the Colombia's peace accord. What was promised was that FARC was supposed to lay down all their weapons, and the government would send in aid towards all these villages so they could rebuild, I guess, some of their civilization and provide jobs and education. However, not all towns were upheld by this promise. In fact, most of them were just left to dry or fend for themselves. Basically, the government didn't uphold their end of the bargain. So people are now relying on mostly cocaine, not the drug itself, but rather the production of it. Colombia naturally produces coca, which is used to produce that cocaine. So they rely on that to survive. All right. And finally, to finish all of this, a brief synopsis of what I shared with you today includes discussing some of Colombia's customs, followed by some cultural norms, and ending with the current headline happening in the country. I hope I successfully shared with you a little part about Colombia, since Colombia can hold far much more than anticipated. Any questions?
No.
All right. You may proceed.
Okay. Can I start now? Okay, thank you. Do you know that the Bangladesh was once a part of Pakistan? And beside Bangladesh being a Muslim country, it consists of many cultural practice and respectful tradition. I was really interested in Bangladesh culture because it used to be a part of Pakistan and Pakistan used to be a part of India, and I'm from India. And after that, I do some research and know about the culture of Bangladesh, because it is dividation was 1847. That's why it is long time. I just want to know the culture of Bangladesh. That's why I choose this topic. Through my speech, I will be introduce you an overview of the country, cultural dimension, and current event. So let's get started with basic of Bangladesh. According to 2022 Cultural Grand Online World Edition entry on Bangladesh under greeting, when it comes to greeting in Bangladesh, it is a sign of respect and closeness. When the same sex are meeting together, they are hugging and shaking their hand. And in traditionally, male persons are touching feet of elderly. It's a tradition. But for the opposite sex, they are not doing like this. They are saying by greeting by saying, sorry, my hand is salam walaikum, or they are touching their heart and saying salam walaikum with the opposite sex. And in the reply, other person is saying walaikum assalam. Uh, and second point, let's continue with the Bangladesh cultural norms. Based on greed, hot state, low rank individualistic, it's 20%. It shows that it is an independent country, sorry, dependent country and loyal to each other. Because the Bangladesh is the collectivistic country, and people have family responsibilities, support each other, and being commitment with the family and relative too. Now we have learned about the Bangladesh. Let's know some current event about the Bangladesh. After 2 years, Bangladesh celebrated New Year on 11th April 2022. Because of COVID, everyone knows it's a pandemic all over this is a big event, and in this event is called Pehla Baisakh in Bangladesh, and they are celebrating with a very grand level. This current event is that. And let me conclude a brief synopsis about overview, cultural dimension, and current event. I hope I shared my successfully. I shared my about my country. Thank you.
What does anime, samurais, and the fastest train in the world have in common? They all come from Japan. Today, I'll be telling you about the country of Japan as well as the people of Japan. Actually, most of my family on my mom's side has come from Japan. They live there right now. I visited 3 or 4 times in my life, so this has given me a first-person perspective of what it's like to live there, whether it's visiting the main cities like Tokyo or the rural suburbs surrounding it, or the farmlands way out up in the mountains. First, I'll give you an overview of the country and its unique communication behaviors. And then I'll be giving you the cultural dimensions and then a current event that's going on in Japan right now. So let's get right into it. In Japan, personal image is emphasized much more than in other countries in business and personal aspects. According to the 2022 Culturegram's Online World Edition's entry on Japan under the General Attitude section, most feel an obligation as to not seem rude. Politeness is considered extremely important. Even the phrase no is not that common and rarely used in Japan. Most of the time, they'll say something more like, I'll think about it later, instead of that. Enduring patience is a common practice that's respected in Japan, which is like, sticking through it, just be nice and have your head down to, make everyone else feel comfortable. Loyalty to one's group is a tradition, and it's also emphasized in Japan a lot, whether it be in a business aspect to all, stick together and be loyal to your group, your colleagues, or Also just in sports, any community aspect, as well as businesses value loyalty over aggression when it comes to new hires, new employees that they're bringing on. So instead of someone who's, the best in sales, they'll opt for someone who's going to stick around for 30 years and be loyal to the company more so. And also, even before the pandemic, many Japanese people were known for wearing face masks and during public transportation or just walking around to, be more polite to everyone around them. Now that I've told you about how Japan interacts, let's take a look at the culture as a whole. So their culture motivates everyone for perfection and promoting fairness. Based on Hofstede and Michael Minkoff's research on the page What About Japan, last updated in 2022, gave Japan an intermediate score for the power distance and a 95 for their masculinity. While they're not as hierarchical as other Asian countries, they can appear that way in their business because of the decision-making process that they use. So they go through the whole chain of command, which is hierarchical in and of itself. So that makes them seem very, masculine in that way. But while the business side can appear that way a lot, their educational system is a lot on the contrary. They'll try and make it the most fair and equal for all students, no matter what school they go to or grade or whatever. They'll have kids playing with older kids, younger kids. They're all together. They're not separating them based on, intelligence or any type of personal traits. So as well as being masculine, they also promote competition between groups, like in sports, and also just job offerings. They promote it from a young age to, for sports teams, you want to stick together, but you want to beat the other guys. And with job offerings, you want to, being polite, but also, you want to get the job and do it right. Now that I've told you about Japan, how they interact, let's take with that being said, let's talk about a recent event in Japan. New traps have been deployed to prevent turtles from disrupting Japan's largest airport. In the article, Narita airport officials set traps to tackle invasive turtle species by Hiroyuki Kamisawa in the April 21st, 2022 edition of Asahi Shimbun states that airport officials are setting traps on their runways to prevent these turtles from getting on and, blocking the planes from going down the runways. And they actually started doing this because of an event that happened last year in September of 2021, where a couple of turtles got on the runway and they halted all the runways for 10 to 15 minutes, which isn't a big deal. But, if one of them accidentally gets in the plane, or, they're going down the runway and a turtle flies into the engine or something, it can be really dangerous for obviously the turtle, as well as everyone on board the plane. It could have an engine malfunction whenever they're trying to take off. And there've also been 9 similar cases to that since 2013 of turtles being on the runways. So they're trying to deal with that. They're unsure of how the turtles are getting there, but they have placed 140 traps around the runway and different water sources near there. So now that I've told you about the turtle news, let's recap. Firstly, I told you about an overview of Japan as a country and how they communicate uniquely between each other. And then I told you about their cultural dimensions. And lastly, I told you about the current event. I hope you learned a thing or two about Japan and what they have to offer.